Good morning, Orod.
Hey, Soma, good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm very good, and I didn't shave today, as you can see.
That's
Um,
the genuine Orod. I love it.
well, the thing is, normally, historically, when I stop shaving for more than a week, then I'm not gonna shave for like 2, 3 years. So let's see what happens this time.
Well, we all should get used to seeing Orod in that way. And also, our Kanban participants will see you in the same way then.
Yeah, no, I think I need to shave for Kanban Australia. I need to look a little bit more, presentable.
All good, all good. So,
Yeah, all right. So, yeah, I'm ready for Kanban Australia. I booked my ticket and all that. And actually, maybe when we get a little bit closer, maybe we can have a session a little bit more about Kanban Australia as well.
yeah,
All
that's
right, Soma. What is the topic for today?
okay. Actually, there's something really interesting happened at work.
There is always something interesting happen at your work, you know? I don't know
Well,
why nothing interesting happened to me.
what can I say? I work at a very interesting place, I would say. So, someone asked about social contract. You know, social contract ways of
Yeah, yeah.
working
Hmm.
agreement in a team. And it would be really great if we could talk in today's session,
Hmm.
how can we use static to
Okay.
a social contract or a ways
Hmm.
of working agreement? So, what are your thoughts about it?
Okay. Good. No, that's an interesting I think topic and question to discuss today. So maybe for those who are not familiar with the static and what static is, just give everyone a little bit, just a background, a little bit what it is, and then we can link it to social contract and how we can use it. So for those who are not quite familiar with the Kanban method as a change management approach that we continuously talking about it, static, which is stand for system thinking to introduce Kanban. It has different step that help a change agent to introduce Kanban or introduce a change to a team or organization. And basically it starts from, okay, what is the source of dissatisfaction? What is the problem we have? What makes people a little bit upset? And then understand the current situation and understand the different types of work we have, and then design a system to solve that problem and start measuring and to see if the solution actually solved the problem or not. So this is a kind of quick brief introduction to static. But what I like to kind of focus today is the system thinking part of static. So one of the purpose of having social contract is to make sure people who working in a team are clear about how they want to work together. But another thing is quite important, and it's one of the key um, characteristic of a high performing team is what is the impact of our work and our job on other people and other teams, right? And system thinking, basically, what is try to do is to look at the entire system, not just the small component of a system, right? So we don't want to just focus on this team in isolation. We want to look at this team and the relation of this team and the people of this team with everyone else in the organization, right? So probably what we can do is, at least to start with, is to, when we want to write our social contract, which in Kanban we call it policies, right?
Yeah.
Uh, is to look at the dependencies with our team as well as the impact of our work on other people's. right? So that's probably something I think quite interesting that we can look at when we want to write social contract, because I think it's quite common that when people uh, want to agree on the social contract, is just to think about, okay, our team, what is the expectation from each
That's
other,
right.
what time we want to run this meeting, what, stuff like that.
Mm.
So that's, I think, one thing we can looking at. And another thing, so maybe before I continue, I'll maybe hand it over to you and see what do you think about it.
So, one interesting thing that actually happened is that, a member from the recruitment team and
Mm-hmm,
member from design thinking team, they wanted to run this social contract ex
mm-hmm,
and experiment because there's a lot of like disagreement and misalignment within
mm-hmm,
where we're working. So they approached me and they wanted more like recommendation that how could they run it. So one thing that I've always noticed based on my experience is that when you said it really rightly, is that you only look within your team for social contract, and people always go for the behaviors. We
mm-hmm,
want this behavior, we want that behavior. Most of the time that do not stick is because people are not relating it to a pain point or sources of dissatisfaction, as we mentioned in Kanban.
mm-hmm,
Now, I always like to make things more relatable to the people. So I use pain point instead of dissatisfaction because that's a word that we all can connect with. So when you do that, it's not only within our team, it's also things that happening outside, but we are the source of it. So again, a bit of empathy is going in there.
mm-hmm,
So the social contract that comes out of those are really going to stick because it is not only about work, it is also about changing the culture. But at the same
mm-hmm,
time, I believe that for human beings who are working, work is a source of motivation. And the
mm-hmm,
more you get done, it helps them to feel that feeling of achievement, that we are achieving something. So normally, this is what human beings want to do is that they want to finish the work. That
mm-hmm,
is them. So when you are going through this exercise, you do take on a different lens and see that what are the sources of pain point within the
mm-hmm,
team and outside the team. And then you come up with, five, six policies or social contract or ways of working agreement, which is the first agreement to solve some of those pain points. Now,
mm-hmm,
if you have, like, say, let's say 20 pain points, I would
mm-hmm.
really recommend that please prioritize them.
Yeah, no, the static, the first step is source of the satisfaction. So you might have 200 different things
200.
to dissatisfy
Exactly.
you, but what are the source of it? What caused those? Right?
Yeah. But that's where like I have recommended to prioritize it because something is within our control, but something could be beyond
Mm,
our control. Why we feel that way, even though it's a pain point, it's a very valid thing, but we can't do anything about it at the moment. So
mm-hmm,
let's prioritize and then come up with social contract, policies, or ways of working agreement, which will be solving those. This is our hypothesis. So let's work towards it and see how that goes. Now, when that happens, people already start understanding and like believing in the power of Kanban because this is the beauty about it that it's not only about work bit by bit, it's changing the culture and also how we do the work as humans. So it takes that holistic approach of looking at different perspective, and that is where I would definitely start, which you have
mm.
mentioned already. So let's go through it then. What do you think would be the
Okay.
next?
No, that's good. It was quite interesting, and actually, what you said reminded me something that I recently had a chat with one of the Scrum Masters that I'm mentoring, and she said that I was working with two teams. So I was the
Mm.
Scrum Master for two teams, right? And I had to go to two different stand-up. And
Mm.
these two teams closely work together, right? So I'm not talking about a perfect cross-functional team, right? I'm talking about team with lots of dependencies and stuff like that. And she said that I thought it's not a good idea to have two different stand-up because they work kind of closer to each other and they're not quite aligned. So I, as a social contract kind of thing, an agreement, and to be honest, this is not really a proper social agreement because it's not something that everyone agreed. She thought that okay, it's better if we combine these two stand-up, right? So they started or everyone okay agreed, sure, from next week we do one stand-up, right? And this is what she observed, and then she told me, right? She said that before that, yes, they had two different stand-up and they had some conversation that needs to be discussed with other teams and stuff like
Mm,
that. But because before they combine because people focus on their own work, so it has more value to them and the conversation had some meaning to them, right?
yeah.
When she merged these two stand up, there were quite a lot of tasks that most people didn't even care because it didn't matter to them, so they lost their attention. Also she said that before they combine,
Mm,
after the stand up, people had some meaningful conversation about the work. When they merge it, people just wanted to finish the stand up and run away.
mm,
So she said, I observed that those meaningful conversations that they used to have it stopped,
mm,
right? So what I'm trying to say here, and back to your point, is I think we need to always look at the problem that people have.
yeah.
Having two stand up, what is the problem it can cause, right?
Mm, mm,
If we think about that and if we communicate the problem with people and then people realize, oh, yeah, this is my source of dissatisfaction. This
mm,
is something I don't like it, right? And I'm happy to try something differently. Then, it has a positive impact. But without thinking about the problem,
mm,
and just jump into some kind of best practices, which is
mm.
okay, cross-functional team, one stand-up, stuff like that,
Yes, yes, yes.
then it might have some negative impact that you never even thought about, right?
Exactly.
So I think this is quite important, and it's actually quite a crucial topic to think always about the problem, then solution. And
Exactly.
I think Soma, we need to have a few series about it because I'm thinking about, having some recording some video because
Mm,
for some reason, I have some idea about those reasons, but we don't think about the problem. We always think about the solution, and we
mm,
have a solution for everything,
yes,
right?
yes.
But what static help us is
Mm,
to always think about the problem first,
mm. That is
then
so
the
true.
solution. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is the reason it starts with the sources of dissatisfaction or the
Mm,
pain points. I mean,
exactly.
if you think about it, it's human psychology says, like changes only happen organically. Either it is external, which could be fear or urgency. Like, for example,
Hmm.
if the world is ending, definitely you will change things to, like to survive.
Yeah.
Or it is internal, or it's causing you pain. That's what I call pain points. Like in
Hmm.
my definition, like for example, let's say, like if I'm gaining weight and that is
Hmm.
really not letting me live my life, to the fullest, it is a pain point for me, and I do have to work and change my ways of living so that I can reduce that weight or whatever. Go to a GP, get, help, medical help. Uh, I don't know, weight loss is a very personal topic for me. I keep coming up with example. It's funny, but what I wanted to say is that it could be only because of two reasons, internal or external, the
Hmm.
changes that happens for humans. So what the static or the first step of it does is that let's figure out what is causing us pain.
Hmm.
It could be like, things that we know that it's really, really hard for us and it's internal. The moment it is internal, we have a chance to work on it. And that's
Hmm.
where real evolution comes. It's like,
Mm,
okay, there has to be an improved way to solve this pain point. I want this to go away. Like I'll give you an example. In some places I have seen, like in the same team, they have two kind of people where like one really wants to go to office every day,
hmm.
the other they don't.
That's very unlikely, but okay.
They really don't
No,
want to
I'm
go.
talking about the team that everyone want to go to office. It's
Oh
really
yeah, yes.
weird, but yeah, okay.
But it's always, like some people might enjoy just
Yeah,
their
every day
work.
I'm talking about. Two
Well,
days, one day, I actually
that's
like to go
see,
to
that
office.
could be one of the policies that comes out of it because if you have I'm talking about very extreme set of
Yeah,
people. We
sure.
might not have this scenario in a team, but just for an example, hypothetical situation.
Mm,
If that is the case, what would be an optimal thing to try out? Because we are experimenting at the moment so that, we get a happier team, a
hmm.
team who is comfortable with the ways of working so that they can be their best self when it comes to the work. So,
Mm,
if that is the case, the first recommendation or an idea would be, hey, how about we try 2 days at office where everyone gets together, get most of the meetings done with each other, and then when you're at home, you can focus on the work that needs to be done. So that is one of the experiment idea which could go into your social contract. And when
mm.
that happens, and one important thing about social contract or ways of working agreement or policies, they need to be reviewed at a regular interval.
Absolutely.
The only reason is that the pain points changes
Mm,
based on many factors, based on changes in people within the team, based on the environment, based on the kind of work that's getting into your team. So all we have to do is that we cannot be sticking to the same contract policies forever and think that it will be great. Because
hmm.
again, what you mentioned earlier was really so valid. You said something about best practices.
Mm.
That's the solution that comes to mind when it comes to people, right? This is
Can
the
I
best practice.
correct myself?
Yeah.
Probably it's better to use common practices than
Common.
best practices. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
well, again, I would actually say that best practice is more valid. You know why?
Okay. Right.
Because the context changes. So there is nothing called best practices in this.
Exactly. Yeah,
There are always better practices, which is again suitable to your context.
that's
And
right.
you did bring up this point,
Yeah.
which is so important to understand. The solution needs to fit the problem, it needs to be fit
Mm,
for purpose. So, for that, understanding the context and the problem is always the first step. It is not
absolutely.
getting best practices and just apply. Some people do mention this. It's like this is what is happening in the industry. These are the
Mm,
best practices. It has worked in X, Y, and Z. Now,
mm,
only because it has worked in X, Y, and Z, that doesn't mean mean anything because I am in B or I am in,
hmm. Yeah,
like, so it is a different point that I'm standing in. So please understand A or B before just replicating the solution which has
that's
worked
right.
in X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z.
Yeah, and also if something work with that team, it doesn't necessarily works with other teams. That's I
Exactly.
think that's why I said, common practices, we do it
Yeah.
everywhere, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best or good practice. And one thing I've noticed that when people have a social contract, after a while, they forgot about it and they don't follow it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's most probably because, those agreement hasn't solved our problem
Yes.
necessarily, right?
Yes.
So if we try to find out what makes people upset and cause problem and they don't like it or whatever, and then try, first of all, they easily get agreed to
Mm,
do something differently and
yes.
motivates them to change
Mm,
and start or at least try to stick to that agreement. You know what I'm saying? For example, you were talking about going back to office, right?
mm,
So now I see that a lot of organization forcing people to go back to office, right? Maybe three, four um, times a week. And people don't like it. And after a while, people just sneakily don't go because it's almost impossible to track everyone,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Even if you have, this system to book your, I don't know, desk and whatever, you can book it and don't go. Who
Yeah,
knows, right? Like 500 people on the floor. Who knows who is there, who's not there, right?
that's right.
So the reason people don't follow, it's because going to office is not a problem necessarily, right?
Yeah.
I used to be a developer
Mm,
and we went to office, okay? We as a developer, we sat next to each other, but we didn't talk face to face. We chat, okay? And it works for us. We had no problem. Maybe some other people had different opinion, okay? But
yeah.
I'm talking about my personal experience with other developers,
Mm,
right? And in so many different companies.
yeah.
So if we are in the same place and we still talk through, chat, then
Yes.
what is the difference, right? Why
Uh,
people needs to see my face, right? So organization needs to think about it or maybe at least explain, rather than force people that you have to come to office. Okay,
mm,
what is the problem we have by not coming to office?
yes.
Right? Maybe it doesn't necessarily our problem, but by coming to office, you go and buy coffee. So you
Mm,
help other, small
businesses.
businesses, and
Yeah.
then people empathize. And
Mm,
they were like, okay, so yeah, maybe if I go there and I spend $5 for coffee and $10, $20 to eat something, so I help, small businesses and, the economy runs and whatever
exactly.
happens,
Yes.
and then people they willing to go to office rather than we push them to go to office.
Yes, that's a very good point. That's a really good point. And we see this is again, right? Like it's change management principle that we have in
Mm,
Kanban. It is always starting with the current state because really our economy, our small businesses are dying. So if
mm,
that's where people would start, that hey, we should be helping each other to
yeah,
build our economy in this country, then
that's
it
right.
would be a different approach. And you said it really beautifully that we often forget that what problem we are trying to solve.
Mm,
Rather, we just come up with a directive. Now, the
yeah,
directive is always a forced one. If
mm,
you start with the why and then let the people choose the option themselves, they will come to the same page. Just give them the time and also trust, a little bit of trust and respect goes into
oh
that,
yeah,
that people will do the right thing. So
mm,
again, that's where the social contract, right? Now, your earlier point about social contract that people forget when they create it after like say, 5 weeks, they are not following it
mm,
because of course it is a social contract is a feel good thing for most of the teams. We have it.
mm.
No one actually thinks that what problem will be solved if we
You
are
know,
creating this.
because we don't articulate the purpose of social contract either.
Exactly.
We, as a Scrum Master, for example, I don't want to blame Scrum Master, but as a team lead for you, whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We were told to have social contract. It's a
That's
trend,
it.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Most of us don't even know why we need to do it, right? It's a checkbox. I need to tick it. Okay, so now we have social contract. It's in the Confluence, and that's it. So I tick it, and all good. But why? Because having social contract or social contract, the purpose of social contract is not for managers, is not for team leaders. It's for the people to, who works together. So it should help them to work together better. If it
Mm,
doesn't, then don't do it.
that's it. I very, very valid point. And everyone who is listening to this episode, please understand the value that a social contract or policies can bring to your team before just, like doing it because it is part of your team charter. Someone has
Yeah.
handed you a list of things to do when you have a team. Don't do it for the sake of doing it.
Mm,
Do it for the right reasons and always understand the purpose behind anything. Even when we recommend things in this episode or like in this podcast, please
mm,
make sure you question it. You try and understand the why behind it and apply it based on your context. Because
Absolutely.
in this world, everything is always, like related to the context we are in. So
Hmm.
something that is right for someone may not be right for you. You do have to tweak it a little bit to make it the perfect thing for you at that moment. So that's the only thing I would say. Well,
Absolutely. All right. So I think it's time to kind of
yes.
summarize what we discussed. So today we talk about can we use static approach to write a social contract or policies? And we talk about, one of the purpose of having social contract is to think about the impact of our work to with other teams, and that's one of the purpose of static system thinking. And we also talk about to always think about the problem, and that helps people and motivates people to agree how they want to work differently to solve that problem. And what else did we talk today? Did I miss anything
Oh,
else?
no, you said it amazingly. Just that static will always start with the context, the pain point, or the sources of dissatisfaction. Focus on that. Spend good amount of time to get everyone on the same page about what are the problems they are facing, what upsets people in the team, or what are their pain points, and then from there you can create your social contract, policies, or ways of working agreement, which will help you to get better as a
Mm,
team and also remember to review them periodically.
absolutely. And another thing I wanted to say regarding the social contract is that everyone in a team must be clear, completely clear about the social contract and agreed. And th
Yes,
I think this is quite important because agreement is different with satisfaction. So p
yes.
not everyone has to be happy with the social contract, but
Mm,
they needs to agree with that.
yes.
Um, and as I said, frequently review and change it. All right. Very good. So thanks, Soma, and thanks everyone for watching and listening us, and we'll come back next week.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.